All right, let's jump straight into the shadows today. We're stepping into a dark, cautionary fable wrapped in decaying architecture and ancient secrets. Picture an echoing stone chasm where a solitary shepherd stumbles upon a golden ring. But this isn't just a shiny trinket. It offers something incredibly dangerous, the absolute power of invisibility. And what's wild is that this artifact perfectly mirrors the corrupt wooden O, which is this dark, theatrical stage where a manipulative jester and a cunning wizard weave their alchemical illusions.
So, it really begs the question, what actually happens to the soul when the consequences of our actions become totally invisible? That's the beating heart of this explainer. You see, both the shepherd and the masters of this dark theater were trying to bypass what they called the king's order, basically the natural laws and the real-world consequences of their actions. They honestly believed that if they could just control appearances and hide in the shadows, they could somehow escape the heavy burden of living a virtuous life. But as we're about to see, taking that shortcut comes at a truly terrifying cost.
That brings us to Act 1, the stage of counterfeits.
Imagine this stage as a dark laboratory built for social engineering. To really get what's going on here, we have to look at the philosopher Glaucon. He made this incredibly cynical argument that humanity secretly just yearns to escape consequences. He basically said justice is merely a second-class good, something we only put up with so we don't get punished. His theory was that if you give any rational person the cloak of invisibility, they wouldn't use it for good, they'd immediately pivot to fulfilling their absolute lowest base appetites. And this chilling idea? Well, it's exactly what the jester set out to test in the shadows of his theater.
Now, the way they ran this test was through something called the ignis fatuus. Think of it as this shimmering veil of alchemical illusion, built entirely on mercury-soaked lies. It was a massive collective delusion that completely tethered the spirits of the citizens. It whispered through the cracked walls that morality was just this tedious, heavy burden, and that greatness could somehow be plucked right out of the dark without doing any of the hard labor of actual virtue. And tragically, trapped in this environment, the people eagerly traded in their inner compass for false comfort.
Which sets up our next chapter perfectly. Act 2. Enter the false heroes. Okay, so into this rotting, shadowy theater step two deeply tragic figures, the knight and the priest. Now, they made a massive mistake. They thought these predatory artifacts, the Ring of Invisibility and the Shadow Ring, were actually tools of true power. They believed they were driven by heroic passion and spiritual authority. But waiting for them was the jester. And he didn't fight with swords or spells. He used weaponized prose. He unleashed this salty river of speech, spinning a web of false intimacy to completely disarm his audience. Against that kind of sophisticated psychological manipulation, the naive, shortcut-seeking heroics of our knight and priest literally didn't stand a chance.
So, they end up making the tyrant's choice. By embracing the deception of the ring, they proved Glaucon right, that without consequences, the soul surrenders to its basest desires. The crazy part is, they thought they were the masters of the stage now. But in reality, they were anchored to the Gothic floor by the heavy, invisible chains of their own indifference.
Moving deeper into the dark, we hit Act 3, weaponized prose and puppets.
This is where the visceral, gruesome transformation happens. The second you put on that ring of invisibility, you aren't gaining power. You're actually succumbing to the corrosive acids of ego. These artifacts don't elevate you. They accelerate a state of unproductive stagnation. It eats away at you until, actually scratch that, it completely hollows you out. The end result is you transform into a hollowed-out puppet, your eyes emptying out as you move in this hypnotic, terrifying lockstep through the decaying corridors of the theater.
You see, deep in the heart of the labyrinth of time, this community of souls traded their inner reason for the jester's illusion. The jester deployed his verse of command, which acted like a psychic harness compelling these hollow puppets forward. The performative not-self was weaponized. Basic social conventions were tossed out the window, literally turning neighbors into demons. The whole community was flooded with a raw, unchecked hunger, and the citizenry were reduced to nothing more than disposable political assets in the wizard's grand, crumbling design.
And that inevitably leads to Act 4, the disharmony of souls.
As we wander through this labyrinth, we're seeing exactly what the ancient philosopher Socrates warned us about. He argued that when you place appetite above reason, you suffer a disharmony of the soul. You end up enslaved to the exact desires you were trying to fulfill in the first place. Whether you're the knight, the priest, or even the jester himself, abandoning reason turns both the ruler and the ruled into tyrants. They are all hopelessly trapped in a thresher of their own making.
Driven by this primal, dangerous hunger, the society just started rotting from the inside out.
Remember that web of false intimacy we talked about? As the jesters systematically dimmed the light of objective truth, a massive void was left behind, and the community cannibalized its own spirit to fill it, until Neighbor truly became beast in the pitch-black darkness, prowling around to hunt down any remaining shred of passivity in their hearts.
Which brings us to the inevitable collapse. Act 5, the Great Clock strikes.
Look, a theater state built entirely upon the shimmering veil of the ignis fatuus and mercury-soaked lies is fundamentally unstable. It just can't last forever against the crushing weight of reality. In a matter of seconds, the great clock of consequence strikes with a heavy metallic clink of duty, signaling that objective reality has returned. In minutes, the hollow puppets take their final bow on the stage of counterfeits. Give it hours, and those unstable alchemical foundations violently ignite into a literal crown of flame. And over days, the entire house built on deception is consumed in total finality. Socrates' warning comes to life. The power breathed out through the mouth eventually consumes everything it touches.
In the fire, it was absolutely impartial. It spared no one, not the manipulator and not the manipulated. The wizard, the jester, the knight, the priest, all gone. When the smoke finally cleared, all that remained of the shepherd's golden ambition and that grand stage of counterfeits was a single, smoking, charred circle, and a faint, ghostly tittering echoing through the ash-covered ruins.
So here's the haunting question we have to walk away with today. Because eventually, the veil of consequence is lifted in everyone's life. It always is. When that happens, will your inner compass hold true? Will your soul actually endure the light of objective reality? Or will you join the hollow puppets in the charred circle? It's something we all need to think deeply about as we navigate our own stages. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.